researcher. Thanks, Rach. The session is being recorded. If anyone does have any issues with that, please let myself or Rachel know, or one of the team. Just drop us an email. I'll hand over to you, Natalie.
Oh, thank you very much. So thank you so much for all coming along. I'm just going to pop this onto the screen. There we are. Okay, so it's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and some of the slides are fairly kind of extensive and quite wordy. But the purpose for that is we're going to then share the PDF. So please do get in contact. Yeah, and we can go into more detail if you wish. So watercress, in a nutshell, so the main focus here is looking at actually what can be said and what can be used on either product labelling or within marketing tools. And I'm kind of coming from a health and a nutrition perspective. That's where my background is. And there's quite a few kind of legalities and complexities along the way. So in a nutshell, obviously, as I'm sure you're all aware, we're kind of looking at kind of the brassica and the cruciferous vegetable kind of family. And that in itself is such an interesting and diverse sector, particularly looking at a lot of clinical research at the minute and looking at its interactions towards a lot of the non-communicable disease that we're really seeing that the nation is being faced with at the moment. Unfortunately, and I'll come on into that in a minute, there's nothing that we can actually put as a kind of a statement, as a health claim, but there's some really interesting research which you can link back to, you know, kind of with promotional materials to show and demonstrate to the consumer, you know, what is out there and, you know, what is being kind of researched at the moment. So we're just going to start by kind of stepping a little bit of a step back. So watercress itself has been given TSG status, so which is kind of a blessing and a curse for the Welsh watercress in itself. So you can certainly still say that it's Welsh watercress because that's where it's been grown, and you can show kind of the supply chain with it. But also watercress in itself, I think this began back in 2011, so it's been quite a huge campaign. I'm not sure who's been driving it, but really trying to give the traditional speciality status within the UK, to get it UK protected, and this label can be put on all UK produce or UK watercress. There are caveats within it, so again it has to, and there's a link on the side as well to what the growing conditions must be, and again there's nothing unusual. It is just kind of the normal kind of growing process that you would do for watercress, and really this is kind of to protect all of the polyphenols and the incredible nutritional values that are within watercress. So again it's really great that it's kind of there, but again if you're looking for different growing systems, some of them do just need to be slightly kind of looked into to make sure that they're compliant for this particular label. Having said that, consumers, as we know, aren't particularly au fait with this. Again, this is kind of one of those things you have to go on a deep dive to really find out about. So I don't think we need to worry about it as a consumer perspective, but it is a nice to know. So kind of when we're adding Welshness to it, and again, making sure that we're kind of keeping on the right side of the regulations for this, we can absolutely say that things are grown in Wales and put the location. And more from what we're seeing is that the consumers really want to see where this is coming from. Using Aldi, for an example, they started to put the Welsh logo onto the Welsh eggs. And again, from what they were suggesting is actually it was showing an increase of sales because people like to kind of, you know, put this association of where it's grown. And also Welshness really does bring a lot of confidence to the consumer. They believe that it's traditional, there's a lot of care, and again it kind of gives them that kind of provenance. It might be useful, and again this probably won't be for me to do, but maybe kind of creating a logo that does kind of, you know, indicate that it is a Welsh watercress. And also you can use the QR code system if you wanted to start putting links towards how things are grown. Really interesting about growing stories, and if we're looking at from the dairy sector, for example, a lot of them now are really showing kind of the care that the cows are going under, and exactly this can be translated into here and kind of looking at how it's grown and the links. And I think as well more and more consumers are wanting to know kind of the ethos of the company. So again, this isn't necessarily a health claim of any variety, but just a really nice indication. And also then we can kind of look at or link back to the website that's here and just kind of give more information, and maybe in the future having something like a cheese festival but a Welsh kind of watercress version, or even a Welsh vegetable version to really push it. And again, that doesn't necessarily have to be in person, it could be online, lots of interaction, and really the use of social media in particular to drive to the kind of perhaps the younger demographics as well who might be interested to uptake it in its various forms. So there's quite a lot of traditional and medicinal use with watercress, and for many years science began to kind of dismiss the traditional use, thinking that it was all a little bit kind of hocus pocus. But actually there's been a big drive to revisit all of these traditional uses, to really kind of understand actually where have all these kind of beliefs come from, and most of them, once they've kind of gone through clinical trials, really are shown to be credible in there. in their kind of claim. So again, we can't necessarily claim this on a packet, but we can link it back to the research. So all sorts of things. So watercress with reducing blood pressure, obviously massive people with high blood pressure at the moment. And we're then kind of seeing it for arthritis, obviously for scurvy. And you might laugh, but actually, unfortunately, that there has been incidents of scurvy re-emerging within the UK population, again, because of people just aren't eating enough vitamin C or eating enough fruit and vegetables. And all of these traditional medicinal uses that were traditional are really kind of then being honed in on due to the nutrient content and the metabolites that are within it, which again, perhaps a few years ago, people couldn't study to the extent that they can now. And watercress has such an abundance of polyphenols, so kind of the plant different chemicals, all of metabolites, lots of different nutrients within that, which are absolutely shown to be beneficial to human health and across the whole life stages. So just a little bit of research. There is loads and loads and loads on this, and I'd be more than happy to share a long list of different research resources that we've got. But I've just selected a few that are particularly of interest at the moment. So things that kind of are facing the UK population, or not just the UK, also kind of European and Western populations at the minute. So a lot of it comes down to the secondary metabolites. So we're looking here at the glucosinolates, we're also looking at the ionanthins and the quercetins. These are really the antioxidant properties within watercress, and watercress has much higher levels of these particularly than other edible plants. And again, I'll share all this with you. There's a little link on the side, but you can just see the extent of different nutrients that are within watercress. And these go far beyond your vitamins and minerals, which unfortunately, again, don't enable a claim, but there is a lot more information that's coming out of these at the moment. So the polyphenols are obviously found in loads of different plants, and obviously teas and all sorts of things that are out there. They can be maintained if it's in a powder or a tincture. So if people are eating raw watercress, they're going to get the benefits, but also if you're looking at different ways of cooking it, the more kind of bitter or astringent the food, generally the higher levels of polyphenols, and it's usually there to protect the plant against disease or being eaten. So again, we kind of get the benefit, which on the flip side is often why a lot of children or even adults don't want to eat it, because it's quite bitter. So again, different cooking processes can break this down. So again, steaming or boiling can begin to reduce it, but equally by going through different processes does begin to reduce the amount of nutrients in there. So it's a little bit of a weighing up between the pros and the cons. So lots of different kind of vegetables that we're looking into, and particularly brassicas are high in the isothianates, and particularly sulforaphane, which has had an awful lot of press at the moment, particularly in broccoli, and its anti-cancer fighting potential. And lots of different epidemiological studies are really showing that it's the polyphenols. So of course we need the fibre, the protein, the fats, and all the other vitamins and minerals, but actually it's the polyphenols that are really driving the kind of the health enhancement, which is real interest when we're looking at a lot of supplements that are out there, take a particular compound, but they don't use that whole food matrix, and a lot of these things degrade through that type of process. So it's the whole food that really is the important thing. So again, just to kind of showing here on different kind of ways that we're cooking can really just change. And again, I'll share all of these. But as you kind of go through different cooking processes, the amounts of polyphenols begin to decrease, as do a lot of the vitamins. So vitamin Bs, all of the different vitamin C are water soluble. So as soon as we're kind of boiling them or exposing them to a lot of water, we will begin to just take out some of that. On the pros and cons, once you're boiling or steaming, again, it kind of breaks down the fibre. So then we find actually we have a higher access to mineral content. So again, fors and against, but raw, I think, when it comes to watercress is certainly the way forward. So the antioxidant research really is the main piece. Any of the polyphenols are responsible for reducing any oxidative stress. And we're seeing that oxidative stress is anything from stress that we're just kind of getting from day-to-day life, but also the exposure to lots of different toxins. Obviously, a lot of poor diets that we're seeing at the moment as well. So whilst kind of a little bit of an addition wouldn't necessarily reverse a poor diet, it would certainly help. So again, any intake is always going to be better than none at all. And as I mentioned before, it's the glucosinolates that really are the key within watercress. So again, lots of different polyphenols, but these are the particular area that are most exciting. And we'll also see them in other brassicas and cruciferous vegetables. But again, each different plant has different kind of qualities. And when it comes to watercress, it really is the glucosinolate. Now, so as soon as we start to cook it, it does break down. As soon as we start to chew it, and basically then kind of opens up all of those compounds, and that's where the real magic happens, and that's where we are able to kind of access a lot of those particular kind of nutrients that are so fundamental to human health. really extensive work that's being done at the minute in a place called the Linus Pauling Institute in Oregon. They particularly are focusing on watercress, broccoli and radish of all areas, and they're seeing so many super kind of results from this. And again, the range of different areas that this can really be helping for, everything from neurological disorders to musculoskeletal disorders. And we're seeing a lot of an increase of these different kind of reported incidents in the UK, just as it's kind of becoming much more prevalent. So again, well, we can't unfortunately say any of this on a label, and we can absolutely put a QR code and link it back to kind of all these benefits, which is amazing. And we're seeing this actually as well in the dairy industry. So dairy is a really good example. There's not actually a health claim for dairy, but there's plenty of nutrients that can be linked back, and obviously public perception or know kind of the pros and the cons of these things. So when it comes to anti-carcinogenic or anti-cancer properties of watercress, it's extremely exciting. So going back when I first started a nutrition degree many years ago, actually watercress was the one focus back then, and they were showing that it was killing off cancer cells within test tubes, but again they were looking to do human trials, and through these human trials they are now seeing that breast cancer, bladder cancers and prostate cancers are beginning to decrease. Now, again, the unfortunate thing here is that we can't claim anything. You can't put that watercress is anti-cancer, even though a lot of this research is really fundamental and really interesting and showing some fantastic results. But again, linking back to these things can be a really key way of kind of showing and demonstrating the health benefits of watercress. So again, diabetes, another one. We know that the diabetes incidence is rising rapidly, and we're seeing a lot more people kind of faced with pre-diabetes. And again, just watercress itself really can help just lower the blood glucose levels. It's aiding insulin sensitivity, and again, going back to the antioxidant side of things, it's reducing the inflammation. So what's responsible, in particularly, is the alpha-lipoic acid, and this you can get in tablet form, but why would you want tablet form when you can have it in watercress? And again, once we kind of look at this, you can isolate a particular compound, which is great. That'd be quite interesting in itself, but it doesn't bring that array of other nutrients that are absolutely fundamental with the whole food approach. So again, if we're looking at sprouts, again, we could look at the whole kind of the end watercress that you might cut, or also kind of looking at microgreens. Sorry, this is a little bit distorted. I'll make sure that it's not when we send the PDF out. But again, the sprouts particularly are really high in these key metabolites. Even when we look at the end result of watercress, it still contains a lot of the key compounds that are often lost in other edible vegetables, that once they kind of get to their full-grown state, they are still extremely nutrient rich, but they do begin to kind of transfer some of the compounds. And everything to do, again, so saying kind of from breast cancer reduction to just DNA synthesis, just making sure that it's looking after our cellular integrity. So again, some really important key attributes to human health. So if we're also just kind of looking at exercise, that you might think, okay, this might sound a little bit niche, but anything that comes from exercise studies also kind of looks at oxygen disposal and oxygen uptake. So we can transfer this into kind of older adults or across the whole adult population that are seeing a lot of blood pressure. That actually the watercress was shown just to relax the blood vessels a little bit, and also can start to regulate vasoconstriction and vasodilation, so that we can maintain the integrity of our arteries better with watercress than without. And it wasn't a crazy amount. So what they were looking at this particular study was 85 grams of watercress, which is about one bag. So again, that over a day is probably okay, but actually a lot of the results were seen at 30 grams. So again, about a handful. So we're not looking at massive amounts, and obviously there's lots of different forms that could be ingested to really maximize the uptake. Again, this is quite an interesting one. So this particular chef, he looks after different Premier League teams, and he is really pushing the watercress in its whole form. So again, there's quite a few, again, different people that are really advocating its use within the aspirational kind of world of, say, footballers or sports people, but also looking for neurological function. So you might think that's great. So let's look at the nutritional profile going back one, not so much as those nutritional compounds. So the vitamin and mineral breakdown does differ between different crops. The best standard, ideally, would be to take your crop and have it analysed, and that's quite expensive. But again, if perhaps you're coming together, it could be something that's a little bit cheaper. Because if we look across the spectrum, the different nutritional value does differ depending on who's claiming on what they're doing, which can be a little bit confusing. Now, so long as you've got the background of this and the research to back it up, you can use your own testing to claim such nutrient profile. But just for the sake of today, I've taken off a standard table, which is the McCants-Widderson, which is also used in NutriCalc. And this stuff basically gives a breakdown of all the nutritional values that are within watercress. And I've just used that now just to show you what you can claim. So there's a lot of regulations, as with everything. So we've got the nutrition claims, we've got health claims. Health claims, unfortunately, watercress doesn't fit under. It should, in many, many respects. We know that it is full of plentiful bioactive compounds, as already mentioned, but there hasn't ever been a submitted dossier to accredit this. It's very lengthy, it's very expensive. But nutrition claims, there are certain ones which watercress can absolutely claim because it is high in a variety of different nutrients. So again, just in the complexities, it's got to be about 15% of the nutrient reference value in order to be a source of, and 30% to enable a high-in claim. So again, I'll share all this bits and pieces, but this is how we kind of find that regulatory framework. So if we look at the breakdown, we can then see here what watercress is high in and what it is not so high in. And again, actually, it is high in every single level, apart from B12. So again, it has a content across the board. Now, anything here, we can say it's high in vitamin A, source of vitamin B1, etc. as we go through. Again, following up on the mineral profile, again, where we can see that it has a high level of potassium, calcium, again, so really, really key nutrients that are fundamental across the whole life stages. And as I'll come on into a minute, a lot of them that we're seeing that are under-consumed. So if we kind of look at it on a basic level, here we can say that anything on your profile, you can say that watercress is a source of vitamin B1, chloride B6, folic acid, potassium, calcium, manganese. And then high in vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin K, and copper. Now, just a caveat here, but what we have found that consumers often don't like too much scientific information unless they are that kind of health-focused consumer. So sometimes it's just picking those really key ones. I'm just using as an example, I was doing some work with a weaning group, so new parents, and I was kind of talking about the importance of manganese and copper. And they kind of looked at me as if I was kind of talking complete gibberish, and they didn't realise actually that copper was a nutrient that we needed to have. They just thought of it as a metal. So again, it's just kind of making sure that the audience or your key consumer are really kind of up with what you're wanting to push. But again, vitamin A, vitamin C are really key nutrients, which everybody kind of understands. We all know that we need to be having more of. And then from each of these, you can then pull out health claims. So for example, I'm going to pull out folic acid. We all kind of know the benefits of folic acid within pregnancy, but actually folic acid in healthy aging and for neurological integrity is fundamental, and male health absolutely is required. So again, you can use any of the terminology, and I'll pop them into the next few slides, what you can put onto marketing and onto packet claims. And also if we're just to look at vitamin A as well, again, kind of looking at kind of vision, neurological membrane, and again, cellular integrity and immune function, which is still a huge driver, especially since COVID. So again, I'm not going to go through these individually, but you can see here for each of these particular nutrients, they have an authorized health claim wording. You can go slightly off piste with the wording that's here, but you cannot claim anything that is not associated to the wording. So again, you can say cardiac function or helps heart health. So there's a few variations, and if ever you need any help, please just shout. So again, other ones that we can certainly kind of then start talking about in a more complex way and actually putting a health claim onto it. So who does this benefit? Well, absolutely everybody. So none of these nutrients are exclusive to a particular age group. Because it's in a whole food matrix, so it's in watercress, we find that if it's in a supplement side of things or it's been an extract, often it can be in very high levels, which potentially could be toxic. Again, if it's a whole food, it's very, very unlikely that anybody can overconsume them. And again, across the board, all of these nutrients are really, really integral, to be consumed. So again, feel free to peruse these leisure. So just showing here, these are nutrients that are underconsumed. So the higher the bar, the higher that they are in deficient levels. And just to take it from the nutritional profile that I showed from McCants-Widderson, we can see here that actually a portion of your watercress can really address things like vitamin A, vitamin C, folic acid, calcium, etc. And then the ones that I haven't filled in, so for example, iron and iodine, the research does show that there's a very high level of these, but it didn't show it on the database that I was looking at. So this is why it'd be really, really interesting if you could get your own crops analysed, and then you can see if there's any differentiation, and you might be able to claim more. Again, also males, so nutrient deficiencies aren't exclusive to females. And on a really, really worrying term from a nutritional and epidemiological perspective is that it's the younger generations that are seeing more nutrient deficiency. So if we were to kind of even go back 10 years or not even that far, we would generally see that it's the older generation that perhaps might have digestive or appetite decline, but we're beginning to see it in the 20 to 29-year-olds. So the younger that people can be eating these types of produce really can see some significant benefit. So from a nutritional recommendation, we'd be looking to have a good handful. You get anything from kind of 30, 50, 80 grams, and you can add it to all sorts of different things. At the end of this, which I won't go through, I have put some recipes really just to demonstrate the versatility. So again, if people find that it's, or if children find it a little bit too stringent, or they find it a little bit too bitter, again, just by kind of mixing it with fruit or putting it into a smoothie, for example, can be a really good way of adding the nutrients into the daily diet, but kind of also disguising it slightly if they find it just a little bit too strong. And again, it's that combination of dark green vegetables and fruits, which really is kind of key in the human diet. And just an example of different areas that you can pop it into. Obviously drinks. So if we're thinking of a festive thing, we don't have to just be eating it. We can certainly kind of add it into drinks and smoothies, and really kind of make it quite a desirable and high level food to be ingesting. And as I did mention, but I've not really focused on here, are the array of different supplements that you can go down. Of course, now that you have everything from whole food powder, so it's basically been dried and then powderized, you'll find that will not have a particularly high vitamin profile, because again, the vitamins are water soluble, but it will often have a higher mineral profile. So again, this would be subject to having individual testing again, just to make sure that the levels are there. But it is very, very what we're finding actually that anything that's kind of watercress, broccoli, brassicas are becoming a very good trend within supplements because of that high glucosinolate and sulforaphane content. So within the consumer appeal, we're finding that anything really that is gut health enhancing, antioxidants, which again kind of has its knock-on effect of healthy aging, anything that can help active lifestyles, functional foods. And there's been quite a shift for people really looking at kind of self-managed health. So they're going, not necessarily rebelling from pharmaceuticals, of course there is that place, but people are actually seeing what can they do to their own dietary intake or their own lifestyles now to really help them throughout their later life. And absolutely has cross-generation appeal. That there certainly isn't one particular age group that would benefit more. It really is across generation. So just kind of in summary, a huge amount of broad appeal. I think there is a mass, and all depending on who your consumer target is or what the particular product is. Again, you can select a couple of those different nutrient claims to make sure that it aligns to the consumer. As I mentioned before, what we found in other studies that we've done is that anything that's too scientific, other consumers go, that really can't be right, and begin to kind of go, that's nonsense, or they just kind of get a bit overwhelmed with it. So it's just finding one or two key claims which seem to be the best way. There's a huge variety of different formats. I'm also saying that raw is probably the most beneficial on a health perspective. The idea of just getting into the daily diet really is absolutely fundamental. And of course, that can come through kind of different cooking methods, or even through kind of smoothies, juicing, and just making sure that it actually is present in the diet is more so the key than kind of worrying what format that it's in. And then you can certainly then use the location, use the stories, use the social media to really drive appeal. And again, I said that kind of the UK status is really useful, but also you can put the Welsh status if you can prove that obviously it's grown in Wales and it has that whole kind of wealth of authenticity. So I think there's a huge amount of scope to be going kind of with the watercress. There's an awful lot of consumer demographics that would really benefit from it. And again, it's kind of just getting that messages out there in such a format that the consumers would really feel appealing. So I'm going to stop wittering on now. Thank you so much for listening. As I did say, that there are some recipes I've just put back. I can't pretend to be a chef, so I'm not going to go through those. But just to really kind of demonstrate the wide appeal, and some of these are really from high-end marketing, and others are just going to be nice, simple things that you can be having with family meals.
Thank you, Natalie. There was a question in the chat saying, can we use this on our social media? So I think everything that we've sort of talked about can be used in a digital marketing campaign.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it's just kind of that really key of kind of selecting, and this is the really tricky part, is that a lot of us want to know the ins and outs and the whys, the whats that these kind of nutrients do, but a lot of our general consumers, and I don't mean this in a patronising way at all, that a lot of people just shopping and they want to see what kind of jumps out at them. So sometimes it's really actually making it much more simplified versions, that when people are looking on the shelves or looking online, they can go, oh, that's perfect, that's going to help me with my antioxidants, or that's going to help me with kind of active aging. So we can simplify it a little bit as well.
Lovely. And so are there any more questions from anybody? No, well done, Natalie, for getting through all that in such a short, bite-sized time. And as we said at the beginning, we will share the recording and the PDF so people can look at it further in their own time.
Thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, please do put them across to Tyfu Cymru and I can get back to them as well.
In the chat, I put a link to the Welsh Watercress network, and if anybody is interested in joining that, please do email me to express an interest. And yeah, there'll be some exciting other things coming up as we move forward into Farm and Connect with Watercress. So wow. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.